Okay, and so now we'll move on to the last scene of Act 2. And thankfully this is a short scene, so I'm going to aim to work very quickly to it. So if you'll turn to page 78 of your No Fear Shakespeare books, I'll read out to you a summary. An old man and Ross cover the unnatural events of the night. Macduff joins them and announces the king's sons are under suspicion. Ross leaves to Macbeth's coronation, but Macduff returns to Fife. This image will represent the old man. This picture now will represent the Thane of Ross, and this is Macduff. This scene takes place outside of Inverness Castle. It is now morning and everybody knows of Duncan's death. His body has been removed to Colm Hill, the resting place for Scottish kings, whilst Macbeth himself has left to be coronated.
70 I can remember well, within the volume of which time I have seen hours dreadful and things strange, but this sore night had trifle former knowings.
Ha! Good father, thou seest the heavens, as troubled with the man's act, threatens his bloody stage. By the clock 'tis day, and yet dark night strangles the travelling lamp. Is't night's predominance, or the day's shame, that darkness does the face of earth entomb, when living light should kiss it?
'Tis unnatural, even like the deed that's done. On Tuesday last, a falcon, towering in her pride of place, was by a mousing owl hawked at and killed.
Duncan's horses, a thing most strange and certain, beauteous and swift, the minions of their race, turned wild in nature, broke their stalls, flung out, contending gainst obedience, as they would make war with mankind.
'Tis said they eat it.
They did so, to the amazement of mine eyes that looked upon it. Here comes the good Macduff. Enter Macduff. How goes the world, sir, now? Why, see you not? Is it known who did this more than bloody deed? Those that Macbeth hath slain. Alas the day! What good could they pretend? They were suborned, Malcolm and Donalbain, the king's 2 sons, are stolen away and fled, which puts upon them suspicion of the deed. Gainst nature still, thriftless ambition, that will raven up thine own lives means, then 'tis most like the sovereignty will fall upon Macbeth. He is already named and gone to Scone to be invested. Where is Duncan's body? Carried to Colmkill, the sacred storehouse of his predecessors and guardian of their bones. Will you to Scone? No, cousin, I'll to Fife. Well, I will thither. Well, may you see things well done there. Adieu, lest our old robes sit easier than our new. Farewell, father.
Lord Benison go with you, and with those that would make good of bad, and friends of foes.
Okay, and that is the end of Act 2, Scene 4. And it's a very little interlude before we get back into the action. But there are some very interesting themes. In this scene, you'll see the biggest example of the natural order being reversed. So I want you to return to page 78 and we'll look a little bit closer at that theme. So I want you to look down at line 5 when Ross is speaking to the old man and he calls him good father. And in this scene, you'll notice that the word father is used almost the way we would use the term old man today. So you would sometimes call your father old man, but you can also call other friendly older male figures old man as well. And that's the way the word father is being used here. So in line 5, Ross says, "Thou seest the heavens." And this is the heavens here are described as a bloody stage. So this is a metaphor, and it's saying that the world is a blood-stained stage, and heaven here is the roof. So they're using a metaphor, and it's quite interesting because they would have in fact possibly been on a stage, and there could have possibly been some kind of covering or roof above them. So there's an interesting metaphor, the way they're describing the world. And they say that there is a lamp in this world and it's been put out. So they're saying that for some reason, even though it's daytime, the world remains dark. So there's the first instance of the natural order being reversed. It was an Elizabethan belief that when the natural order was violated, such as by somebody killing a king and putting themselves on the throne, that nature would be thrown into chaos. So there's our first signal that it looks like it's nighttime even though it's day. We also heard in the previous scene that the night before there had been a tremor that Lennox had experienced, like an earthquake, and that the wind was blowing downward, down the chimney. So we know that this chaos of nature has been happening for a while. Then the old man says that last Tuesday, so he says now on line 12, on Tuesday last, there was a falcon towering in her pride of place. So there was a falcon flying up high. Now falcons are predator birds, and they are known to kill other birds, including owls. But the old man says that a mousing owl flew down and killed the falcon. So the owl did the hawking rather than the falcon. So there we see another chaotic overturning of nature. Then Ross says Duncan's horses, they were the most beautiful. He said they were the minions of their race. They were beauteous and swift. This is on line 15. That they turned and broke out of their stalls and started being disobedient. And then the old man says something interesting. He said, "'Tis said they eat each other." So the horses ate each other. So if we want to see an example of nature revolting or nature being thrown into chaos, there is an excellent example, and this is all on page 78. So I'd like you to choose one of the quotes, if not both. So I'd say the two best ones would be line 14, "was by a mousing owl hawked at and killed." That's in reference to the falcon. Or line 19, "'tis said they eat each other," which is in reference to the horses. Both of those are good quotes to record on your quote page at the start of your booklet as examples of the chaos of nature, or that Elizabethan belief that when the natural or divine order of things is desecrated, such as the death of a king or the murder of a king, that nature will be thrown into chaos. We'll move on to page 80. So then Macduff enters. So he walks out of the castle as well, and he gives us some very important information. He says that basically everybody after their meeting that Banquo called decided that the guards did indeed kill the king. So those that Macbeth hath slain, that's on line 22, and those is referring to the guards. And then he says that they believe on line 24 that they were suborned, which means bribed, so that somebody paid the guards to do it, and they believe it's Malcolm and Donalbain because they have fled. So after this meeting, basically everything's working in Macbeth and Lady Macbeth's favour. So they believe that the guards killed the king and that it was the king's sons who paid them to do it. And so this means that the only person left to be crowned is Macbeth. And that's the conclusion Ross comes to. He says, this is line 29 to 30, "Then 'tis most likely the sovereignty will fall upon Macbeth." That means that the succession, the line of succession or the crown will fall upon Macbeth. And very importantly, Macduff says he is already named and gone to Scone. So I'm going to take a break here and I'm going to show you a picture of what Macduff means. This is a picture from Edinburgh Castle of the crowning stone. Now before it was taken to Edinburgh, this stone wasn't in a throne, it was just outside, seated upon two other stones, and it was kept in calm. And in the 11th century, in medieval times, when there was a new Scottish king, they would go to Scone and they would sit upon the crowning stone in order to be coronated. And this tradition was so old that no one knows when or why it began. the other place that's mentioned is Colmkill. So if you're looking at your Macbeth maps that you were given in class, you'll notice that there is an island to the west of Scotland, and that's called Colmkill. Now, I'm not sure about the real Scots Gaelic pronunciation, but this is a real place with real graveyards on it, and you can visit it to this day. And now the importance of Colmkill that is mentioned is that that's where they've taken Duncan's body in order to bury him. The last thing to note is that Macduff decides he's not going to go to Scone. That's going to set in place a series of events as Macbeth then turns on Macduff, which pushes Macduff to leave and go to England to meet up with Malcolm. And then that is going to leave Macbeth to kill Macduff's entire family. And it is Ross that says, "I will thither," which means he's going to go to Scone and witness Macbeth's coronation.